Welcome to the Science for Sport podcast, where we dive into stories and insights that drive peak performance. Join us as we uncover the secrets behind the science of success. Here's your host, Richard Graves.
Hello and welcome to the Science for Sport podcast with me, Richard Graves. Each week we look at how technology, scientific research and experience are being used to impact sport around us. This week we look at how technology is being utilised to ensure player safety and encourage greater participation among young athletes. In the United States, NFL franchise the Denver Broncos are teaming up with leading sports equipment manufacturer Riddell to do exactly that. Between them, they'll supply free equipment, including 15,000 smart helmets, to 277 high schools throughout the state of Colorado and give them access to the latest technology and data analysis. In a first-of-its-kind program, Allie, Engelken, the executive director of the Denver Broncos Foundation, and Brian Kopp, general manager for Insight Analytics at Riddell, join me to discuss the initiative and explain how they hope it will positively impact the number of youngsters playing sport throughout the area.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Well, I'm delighted to be joined on today's show by Allie Engelken from the Denver Broncos Foundation and Brian Kopp from Riddell to talk about this all-in, all-covered initiative. And rather than me try and explain what you are teaming up and trying to do, it'd be better coming from you guys. So, Allie, you can go first and explain a little bit about this initiative.
Yeah, over the course of 4 years, so starting this fall in 2025, the Denver Broncos Foundation will provide more than 15,000 Riddell Axiom helmets to cover every single high school tackle football program in the state. That's 277 high schools representing 7 different classifications from 6-man football all the way through 5A. And every single high school in the state that offers tackle football is included in the program at no expense or cost to the school. And that includes not only the Riddell Axiom helmet, but also an opportunity to have a subscription to the Riddell's Insight Analytics program to really focus in on health and safety around the game of football.
It's quite a commitment, isn't it, to commit to supplying equipment and going into every school statewide?
It is. And in doing a lot of research and talking to key stakeholders across Colorado, we realized that there are a few barriers to entry to tackle football. So one of them being concerns around health and safety. That's not only from a coach's perspective, but also a parent perspective. And another barrier to entry is the cost of equipment. So the helmet is the most expensive piece of individual equipment needed to play football. And we realize that schools across the state do not have access to the highest quality state-of-the-art helmets. And we want to remove those barriers and reduce those barriers to entry so that every single student taking the field is able to do so in a top-of-the-line helmet, the highest-ranking Riddell helmet available to high school student athletes. And that was the core of the program, was the access piece, the state-of-the-art equipment, as well as the health and safety component.
And Brian Kopp from Riddell, we're familiar with organisations looking to be an integral part, play a key role in their community, as the Denver Broncos Foundation are in this instance in Colorado. For Riddell as an organisation, what is the appeal of this program?
Really, the breadth of it. As Allie said, it's a very unique, one-of-a-kind, first-of-its-kind program to address the entire state. So obviously we at Riddell, we work with clients all over the country at all levels, but those are individual team or program relationships. Sometimes we work with school districts. There's never been a deal like this across an entire state. So that was the appeal to us, was the way that the Broncos Foundation was approaching this. They made it very clear they want the best there is out there, the top of the line equipment. And we educated them about what Insight Analytics was, and they jumped right on that in terms of what that data could do for programs at all levels. And again, it's something we've been doing for quite some time, but it's great to work directly with them and be able to do this at the breadth that this program provides.
And data analytics is definitely something I want to get to, because no matter what the sporting sphere we talk about these days, analytics plays an increasingly large role in success of amateur and professional athletes alike. But I want to pick up first on this issue of health and safety. We know it's a concern for parents and athletes as well. We know the NFL in itself is investing literally millions of dollars into research for technology, safety, helmet tech going forward as well, mouthguard technology. So how important was this, Allie, when you first came up with the initiative? And how do you go about assuring parents that it is safe, and when their children do take to the field and it's in a contact environment, they're going to be in the best possible hands?
Yeah. Over the course of, the history of football, we've seen equipment change drastically. So even recently in the past few years, so the new models, the new equipment, the new opportunities that are coming up for players are focused on making the game safer. And so when we look across all of our Colorado high schools, the equipment that they're currently using, what they have access to, by elevating every single school, kind of that mentality of a rising tide raises all boats, like we can make the game safer at a state level, and doing so in partnership with a state association like our Colorado association, we affectionately call CHASA. So working together with them to really have a far-reaching approach to health and safety. I think a key component outside of the equipment that athletes are wearing is the role that coaches play in the development of young players. And so with a helmet like the Axiom that has built-in insight analytics and smart helmet technology, we can actually utilize that as a premier teaching tool. So if coaches are able to learn about impacts to a helmet, and they're seeing that across the board of, let's say the linebackers group is seeing a lot of their data coming back that the crown of the helmet is taking the majority of the hits, that's an immediate indicator for a coach that they have a coaching opportunity for technique. So we can increase teaching around heads up tackling to ensure that that linebackers group or any of the players that are on that team are really learning about the sport and learning safer ways to play it. So it's really twofold. It's what you're equipping your athletes with as they're taking the field, but it's also the knowledge and the skills and the training that the coaches have to make sure that they're executing plays in a safe way to make that really a foundation to a program at the high school level.
Brian, I know Allie touched upon the data and the analytics there and being able to use that to help assure parents that their children are in a safe environment. Let's talk a little bit about it then with this helmet technology, because it strikes me, we've spoken to professionals dealing it in rugby, for example, where they have these mouth guards that measure impact severity and triggers a device to tell medical staff whether players need to come off the field for a head impact assessment. How does this work inside the helmet?
Yeah, so this is a project that we've been working on Riddell for nearly 2 decades. It's had different iterations, but really the genesis, Riddell, we're all about protection and performance. And so this was to collect data to help not only build better equipment, but also to provide information to coaching staff, to people playing the game, because we know that it's a contact sport. We also know, if you've ever been to a football practice, there's a lot going on. There's no way one person can see everything that's happening. Just like in rugby, there's going to be, we don't call them scrums, but similar to scrums where there's a lot of contact that you can't necessarily see with your eyes. So this is really meant to be, how can we use technology to collect that and then make sense of it? And as we'd say, let's talk football. This isn't to talk data. This isn't to talk, getting into the technology. We have plenty of people that do that, but really, how do we translate that to a coach? Because we want this to be usable for them. We want this to be additive to what they do. A lot of times what you'll see is this very much validates what coaches are already doing, which is great. Like, this isn't meant to, sometimes people think new technology is meant to turn the sport on its head. It's really about incremental gains and incremental improvements, because a lot of coaches really know what they're doing, been coaching for a long time. This is an additional tool for them. But the way it works is we have a very small, thin film. This is an example of it that we put inside the helmet. So it sits between the outer pads and the inner pads. It's very light. In the middle, it just has a battery pack and a storage unit. The battery lasts the entire season, so you don't have to charge it or anything like that, which I know a lot of the mouth guards you have to. The beauty is when you're not wearing the helmet and you put it on in the locker for the next day, the battery goes to sleep. So we're able to make the battery life last the entire season. And what we collect is the impact severity, location, and time. So we have a timestamp of when that impact happened. We have a location of where on the helmet it happened, and then also the severity of that. And then we take all of that data and then we translate that into reports that we deliver to coaches. So the way that it works in the helmet is everything's being collected on this unit. We then provide all of the coaches and teams with a side, we call it our Riddell sideline device. It's basically a mobile phone that connects to all the helmets by Bluetooth, takes all that data off the helmets, and then connects to the cloud, allows us to create reports. So there's a lot of very technical work that goes into this, but in the end, it's meant to be a simple report that a coach can look at and understand what's happening in his practice or his game.
Now, for our followers that are watching this on YouTube, they're going to love having been able to see firsthand some of the technology that's going into these helmets. For those that are listening to the podcast, Brian, this is where you become the eyes of our listeners. Just explain what you've showed our viewers on camera there.
Sure, yeah. It's a very thin film that basically fits inside the helmet, wraps around the helmet on the inside, and allows us to get basically, this is an impact sensor that, no matter where the helmet's getting hit, even in the face mask, we have an ability to collect that through our algorithms, and it sits inside the padding of the helmet and allows us to collect all that data once the helmet is on a player's head.
And what's that made of, that film?
That is a good question. It's kind of a proprietary film that we've created. That we have a group called Simbex that worked on this. Yeah, that's flexible. It can fit inside the different padding. It's very thin, but there's electronics in here that collect everything that happens within that helmet.
So thin that whoever's wearing it won't actually notice it.
Yeah. I mean, you can't see that it's there really. The only thing you can see is we make sure you can reach the power button to turn it off and on. But there's really a very negligible difference between having it in the helmet or not in terms of weight or feel. Like really, players can't tell the difference.
And I know, Allie, you wanted to come in there as well.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on your point about just technology and how the tool is used. I think it's important to note that it's not a diagnostic tool. So it is not a tool that is going to tell you player X has a concussion. It is a tool that is showing impacts to the actual helmet. So it's not collecting any type of medical data or anything related to the player itself. It's really the helmet component to that. And so it can be utilized by coaches, but also we have some high school programs that utilize this in partnership with their athletic training staff to look at this and look at the number of impacts over time. So it is not a medical device by any means. It is a teaching tool. It is something that can be used as an additive support for coaching staffs as well as athletic trainers.
And obviously, I mean, Brian highlighted that the data gets sent to a mobile device and you can download it and see it there. But this is, again, where the Denver Broncos Foundation plays an important role, isn't it? Because all this technology costs money. It costs a subscription charge to be able to access this. Tell us a bit about how the Broncos Foundation will help out these 277 high schools.
Absolutely. So from a helmet standpoint, every single high school will receive a designated number of helmets, and that is based on the average roster size of their classification. So a 5A school will receive 100 helmets versus a 6-man school will receive 22 helmets over 4 years. We're distributing those helmets in a quarter at a time over the 4 years because we are infusing the helmets at a rate that schools are typically turning over helmets in their inventory. So knowing that budgets at a lot of our school districts are really important and they're being watched very closely, we don't want to put an undue financial burden on schools 10 years down the road when a helmet typically reaches its expiration date. So infusing the helmets at that rate of 25% a year. In the first year, schools will also receive a helmet starter kit. And so that is additional nuts, bolts, face masks, visors, anything that they would need within their school to take care of any regular routine maintenance that would be needed during the season. And then for the Insight Analytics, it is an optional part of the program. So schools have the option to utilize Insight Analytics as they're learning more about it. So more than 1,100 high schools across the country are utilizing this technology. Colorado is a state that has not been widely adopted yet. So we only have 9 schools in our state that have had access to this. So a lot of what we're doing now is education around Insight Analytics and what that looks like. For schools that do want to opt in, the Denver Broncos Foundation will cover the expense of a 4-year subscription to that service for them, as well as the Riddell sideline device that Brian talked about. So for schools that would like to explore the technology, we encourage it. We embrace that. And at the NFL elite college level, we are seeing technology as the move of the future in all aspects of what we do, sports included. So we are educating, encouraging, and embracing the technology and providing that as an option to any school that would like to do so as well.
It strikes me that this whole program's something of a game changer, isn't it? Because if you're at high school over here in the UK, where I am, sure, you have the opportunity to play sport, be it football, soccer, as you might call it over there, rugby, cricket, whatever the sport might be. But it's very much at an amateur level. And whilst everybody's aware of training methods and the increased use of technology, it's not quite so prevalent. This moves it up a whole nother notch to have access to this data, to these analytics, to this technology at such a young age. It can help shape and form potential athletes of the future.
Yeah, and then these helmets are the same helmets that are worn on the field in the NFL. So that's the beauty of it. These are our top in the line helmets. We just introduced this helmet line 2 years ago. It's really an evolution, as Riddell always does, building off of what they've learned in the past. And as Allie said, this inside analytics tool is being used around the country at all levels, but it's still relatively new. This is our second year of offering the analytics to people. We had almost 1,200 high schools last year. I looked up the data. We collect all de-identified data so we can run different reports, and we had nearly 1 million impacts on 13,000 high school athletes last season. And you can see a lot of trends in that. And again, for us, the reason we're doing this at Riddell is we see our vision for the future is that at some point down the line, every single helmet is a smart helmet. And all this data becomes something that at all levels, from pros all the way down to youth, have access to. So that's our goal, that's our vision. And obviously working with Allie and the Broncos Foundation is a huge accelerant to that vision, which we really are excited about.
Yeah, absolutely, and rightly so too. It's something that I hear time and time again in whatever discussion I have. Data's great, but without context, it doesn't mean anything. Now, at high school level, obviously, you don't have the entourage that you'll have with an NFL franchise on the sidelines going through the minutiae of every single number, fact, figure that comes in on a device. So how do you go about at high school level ensuring that the data that they now have access to is in context and is useful? I guess what I'm trying to say, how do you ensure that it's simplified so it actually means something?
Yeah, I mean, the best answer to your question, Richard, is we listen to coaches. We don't just sit and say, here's what I think we need. Because Riddell's worked in football for decades and works directly with coaches, we have unique access to get feedback. And we've been working on this for quite some time. So the reports that we deliver now are based on feedback we got from coaches, based on, kind of what we'll deliver to all the programs in Colorado are weekly reports. So we have the ability to deliver this daily, by player, by position group, by offense, defense. But for now, for most of the schools, it's a weekly report for the entire team. And we focus on coaches. Football coaches are creatures of habit, and they plan out their seasons. They plan out their weeks. They know what they're going to do Monday through Saturday. They know they got a game Friday night. They got to build up to that. So this data very much aligns with that. So they can look back and say, okay, how did we do last week? Wednesday was meant to be a lighter day or a heavier day, and the data shows that. And a lot of times what they want to do is make sure the middle of the week they get good activity in, but then they take it easy leading up to the game. And the data can show whether they're doing that effectively or not. The data can also show what are the players that maybe jumped out. A lot of what we talk about with this information, because it's brand new, is we talk about a couple things. One is you first need to start tracking impacts, because each team is different. Their playing style is different. Players are different. There's no right or wrong answer with this. It's really just, what is your baseline? What are you collecting over time? And then secondly, we talk about trends. Are you above or below that? Is it what you expected? We'll have programs that look at that and say, boy, we hit 50% more than we normally do. That wasn't what we intended to do. Or, we were below what we did. Or, our practices were hitting just as much as a game. That's not what we want. Some programs do, some programs don't. So there's constant debate around how do we keep the players safe? How do we protect them? And one of the best things you could do is start to collect this data, because otherwise, quite frankly, you're kind of guessing. You're kind of guessing whether or not you're going hard or not. And that's what a lot of new technology data is trying to do now, is take the guesswork out, but then create more trends and comparisons. And then the last thing I'd say is we then talk about technique. So Allie talked earlier about if you're getting too much in the crown of your head. I mean, a lot of that goes back to coaching technique. And a lot of this is around tackles. Again, it's an unpredictable sport in the game. You can control everything in practice. So using this data to say, let's make sure we're practicing the way I want to in the game, but doing it in a safe way. And there's been a number of examples in working with coaches where they're able to change what they do in practice to get what they want out of it, but also make sure that the impact profile looks good, and that you don't want to have too many impacts at the top of your head, which is something that at all levels of football they're trying to get out of the game. So we work very hard, back to your original question, of partnering with coaches to make this usable. At no point do we just want to throw data out there just to throw it out there. We want to make it usable for them. And we have a lot of dialogue with our clients to make sure that we incorporate their feedback.
Yeah, and if you're removing guesswork out of the equation, it stands to reason that improves the safety and the nature of the participation of the sport as well. Allie, I wonder, when you're working with an organisation such as Riddell, given their profile, given their insights, given their expertise, as a foundation, how does that improve what you're able to achieve? Because it's not every day of the week that across organisations, foundations want to work in the local community. It's not every day of the week that you get to partner with an organisation of this stature and size.
Such a good question. When we look for partnerships, not only on a nonprofit and granting side, but also in a programmatic partner like Riddell, we look for programs or organizations that align with our company values. So who has a growth mindset, who's looking at innovation in a really unique and different way, and who's willing to go big and try something and take some risks and take some calculated risks that we believe in, in our hearts will make a positive impact across our entire state. And so we're very fortunate. Our board of directors is led by members of our ownership group, the Walton Penner Family Ownership Group, who also embody that growth mindset and that innovation approach to how we do business, but also how we organize and operate philanthropically in the community. So when we were doing our initial feasibility study of what does this look like and what would this take, Riddell was our first call. We've had a longstanding partnership with the organization in a variety of levels related to equipment, related to youth and high school football. But when you have a big idea, you need a big partner to help you bring it to life. And we couldn't think of a better way to launch this with Riddell, a company that's so well respected across football at every single level, that is really leading the charge in innovation, but also leading kind of the youth, high school, college, and NFL space of the selected and preferred helmet provider across all of the athletes. So we look for those that are aligned with us in values and also aligned with us in some calculated risk, and willing to roll up their sleeves and do the work alongside us to make it happen.
And in terms of this program specifically, as far as the foundation's concerned for the Denver Broncos, what will success look like?
Well, we're in phase 1. So really right now, success is education, commitments from schools. It is an optional program. So this is not mandated by our state association. It is truly a way for the foundation to make a positive impact on the sport. When we get through season 1, so in December, if we were having this call, I think we'd love to see the majority of schools opt in to the program. We'd like to see the majority of Colorado schools opt into Insight Analytics. And we'd like to start learning some of those key success stories at the individual school level. Who adopted Insight Analytics from a perspective that they changed their coaching techniques? Who utilized the funding saved from purchasing helmets to add girls flag football as a sport for other athletes in the school? So we see kind of the trickle-down effect and the far-reaching impact beyond number of helmets that are taking the field on Friday nights. And we know that this program in just 4 years will have kind of a generational impact on high school sports in our state.
We'll certainly watch that with a keen interest. And just finally, I wonder from you, Brian, we've had the Chief Medical Officer of the NFL, Dr. Alan Sills, talk to us in the last couple of months on this programme about collaboration across sports, sharing technology, sharing insights, sharing data in order that every sport can learn from each other, the good and the bad points. As far as Riddell goes, going forward, how will programs like this affect what you're looking to achieve at every level through sport, not just amateur, but the professional level as well, and vice versa?
Well, I think it just provides more validation to something we've been working on for a while. As Allie said, I mean, this is truly a partnership. I mean, we talk on a daily basis almost right now. We have a number of different caravans and events going on. We have 60 different Riddell people that will be in the state of Colorado over the course of February and early March, really to get this program launched. So I think that working very closely with them, we'll learn a lot about how this rolls out, because we've done this, but not at this scale. I mean, this is something that is new to all of us in terms of the scale of this project. And I think we'll all learn as to what went well and how we can improve out of year one going into year two. But for us, as I said earlier, we're taking a long-term view of this technology in the sport of football. We have the ability to, because we have such a high market share in the football helmet space, we make this insight analytics or the insight technology standard in all of our Axiom helmets, and allows us to go to a program and say, if you opt into the analytics piece, then we can turn it on and we can start collecting data and provide that to you. So we've made that commitment because we believe so much in this technology and what it can do to help the game. And I think over time, as we have more data, you know, as I said, we had a million high school impacts last year. I think in a couple of years, we'll be over 10 million, because our growth, we had about 1,400 users on this platform last year. We'll have well over 2,500 this year, from major college programs all the way down to some youth programs. And that really is just the starting point, because there are so many ways to help this game. And we think this is a key part of it. So I think we'll be able to build off of the learnings of this partnership to take that to the rest of our clients and hopefully grow from there. And when I said earlier, it's the first of its kind. Hopefully that is the first of many other deals we can do like this. And as Allie can attest, it's gotten a lot of attention and a lot of people reaching out to them and saying, hey, what are you guys doing there? So we're all very focused on making sure year one goes well, but I think it'll be exciting to see where this goes and how it grows from here.
Yeah, and as you say, it's the scale of this program as well, which I think is eye-popping. And honestly, I don't think it'll just be eyes in America that are focused on how it goes. I think across various sporting spheres around the globe, it's certainly going to garner a lot of interest. Listen, Allie Engelken, Brian Kopp, really appreciate your time, and we wish you the very best of luck with this initiative. And hopefully we'll revisit it down the line and get a progress report as well.
We love that. Thank you for having us today.
Thanks, Richard.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.
Many thanks to Allie Engelken and Brian Kopp for joining me on this week's episode and shining a light on how big business, leading sports organisations and the latest technology can all be brought together to open up sporting opportunities for young athletes. If you've enjoyed this discussion and want to find out more, you can do so by visiting our website, www.scienceforsport.com. And if this podcast has been particularly enjoyable for you, please do feel free to share it with a coach, a colleague, an athlete, or a friend. As I always highlight at this juncture, the more downloads we can get, the easier it becomes for us to attract big-name athletes or pioneers at the very cutting edge of technology and leaders in their field. Well, that's just about all from me for this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to the next time I can join you on the Science for Sport podcast.
Unlocking sports science to push the limits of human potential. This is the Science for Sport podcast.